not going to throw shade, but I'm going to unpack a bunch of stuff here from a psychological standpoint. A lot of the movements that are coming out, like Black Lives Matter, as I've said before, I was part of the Occupy, and a lot of these movements, with the current state of children nowadays, with the lack of socialism, like socializing that they do. Everything is on Facebook and YouTube and all this stuff. They're getting further and further separated from each other, and they really want something to bring them together. So what we're getting is this kind of forced ideal of the mid-1960s, where they really want something like the Vietnam War to stand up for. And there is a lot of reasons, for the Black Lives Matter and the guys that are being, shot by police and all these things. There's a lot of real reasons for these things to exist. The problem is, feminism came in the 60s and 70s and turned these kids into a bunch of idiots, and they really have no idea how to come at this logically and to actually progress things. They only know how to act like little children that haven't got their candy in the grocery store. So they really want something to give them a reason to exist, to stand together and fight and try to make something better. The thing is I seen this when I was with the Occupy. It was almost sad to see that these kids really have no clue of how to do anything but talk. They aren't doers, most of them. Well, 90% of them aren't doers. And their idea of doing is just making a big noise and making a big fuss, and like I say, unpacking it from a psychological standpoint, they just really need something to, give them hope, give them they need something to feel like they're in a group, like they really want to be in a group, which is why feminism holds on to a lot of women. Typically, most women that are feminists, first of all, most of those feminists are lesbians, and the rest of them that aren't, what we've found is a lot of the feminists are actually of fatherless homes, as is the prostitutes. Most of those, at least 85% of prostitutes, porn stars, they're all fatherless homes where the father, I'm not saying that they didn't have a father, I'm saying that the actual father, which is what these kids need. Even if you have a stepfather, and you may have the greatest stepfather, in the back of your head you always have that idea in your mind that you wish your father was still around. And that is what we've found with a lot of these studies, that these kids, 80% of men and women in prisons are from fatherless homes. And the problem that we're having is our entire culture is being raised by feminists, and they're making these white knight simps that have no ability to think for themselves, and they don't have any reasoning skills. They can't think for themselves. They have this malaise in life where it's very easy for somebody to tell them something, and then they just take that to the extreme immediately, which is why you have things like the Black Lives Matter saying that one of the campuses, somebody put some dog shit in a bag and left it on the black part of the campus where they had like a black part, and it turns out it was just some blind student that didn't know where the trash cans were at. She had a dog, so she just left it there because she was going to go into the place and have a meeting with some people. So she just left it outside because she didn't want to take dog shit inside because she didn't know where the trash can was at. So, you know, it's this idealistic victim mentality. It's not just the Black Lives Matter, but nobody wants to take responsibility for anything anymore. And this is where it comes from, this feminism mindset, where you have to take ownership of what's gone on in your life. Every time something goes on in your life, you can't say it's not something that I did. It's not because of me. It's because of them, you know. It's because of him, you know. That's not the case. Anything that goes on in your life, it's your fault. If you're in college and you get bad grades, maybe you shouldn't have went out and partied that much. Maybe you should have studied more. You can't blame anyone else for that, you know. And a lot of people try. They'll try to find anybody that they can to blame except for themselves, because they're never to blame, especially if you're a feminist. So this is the mindset that we have our kids in nowadays, and it's very sad, because kids nowadays just don't know how to socialize anymore, you know, to interact in a way that I almost think it could be partly the feminism, and it could be partly this ideal that we have of like war. Because we've been at war for like 219 years of our 250 years in existence in the United States, you know. So all they know is war. You know, we had Vietnam and Korea and Afghanistan and Kuwait and, you know, Somalia, and like, you know, the list goes on and on of the places that the military has been fighting since the 60s, when feminism reared its ugly head. And they really have no idea how to be humans, I guess. I don't know how you would even say it. They've really lost the way to not be a victim. I mean, that's what I don't understand about feminism. Feminists don't seem to understand that everything they say, they contradict themselves, because on one hand, they say that everything they're doing is because they're strong. They're strong women, and they have high ideals and all these things. And then in the next sentence, they say that they're oppressed and they're victims. So which is it? You can't be one or the other. You have to be one or the other. You know, you can't be both. So you can't be powerful and a victim at the same time. It just doesn't work, you know. So I don't understand this mindset that they've gotten into, where they actually think that you can be a victim and still be in power, you know. And nobody will do so much as WikiLink, as look at a WikiLink to find out the truth about anything anymore. All that somebody has to do is say something, and they just run with it. And that's a feminist woman mentality, where you don't need the facts. You just need somebody to point some bullshit out, and then let's run with it. Sounds like a good idea to me, you know. And that's basically how they get a lot of their movements going, these feminists. They don't have anything to back it up, and they can just throw some bullshit stats out. They have some feminists that made some books and made some studies, and when the problem that you have with most of these studies, that is the first thing that you should look at, is what was the conclusion they were trying to get. When you're doing a study, you have to have a thesis, an analysis. What are you trying to get? What do you think? What do you think's going to happen? And if that's biased and that's your starting point, and all you're doing basically is looking for evidence to corroborate what you think, the study's bullshit. It's already fucked, And that's what happens with a lot of these feminist studies, is they come in it thinking already that they know what's going to happen, that they know what's up with all of it. So it becomes very silly, And most of these studies that they use, that they talk about all the bullshit, basically it's all 100% non-factual, and that's like the wage gap, how women are downtrodden in society, how they, how they're oppressed, and how there's a misogyny going on everywhere. Everything that they talk about is complete horseshit, and if you call them on it, the first thing they start talking about is Syria and fucking Iran and Africa and all these other countries. And then you'd ask them, well, that's great that those countries have those problems and it's due to religion, but what about the US? What about here? And they can't point things out, and if they do, it's some bullshit like the pay gap, And if you ask them about the pay gap, there's two things that you can say if a woman says something about the pay gap that shuts it down really quickly. First of all, there was a law that came into act, which was the Equal Pay Act, and that was in 1964. And since then, no women have ever brought a case into the courts saying that they made less money. So if it's such a big problem, then where's all the court cases to back that up, And secondly, is if it is truly the case that women have just as many skills as men, and that they get paid less than men, then how can a man get a job? Because why would any employer hire a man with the same skills as a woman that he's going to have to pay more money to? So if there is a wage gap, pay gap, where you can pay somebody else 75% of what somebody else gets paid, then why would you not hire that person? Because that's all about the bottom line. If your company's about the bottom line, then you would think every company in the world would want to hire just women. Makes sense, right? From a money standpoint. So where's all these women that are victims then? If they're victims and they can't make as much money, then why isn't everybody hiring you? Because if I have a company and I know that I'm going to pay a woman less money than everyone else, then why wouldn't I hire all women and say fuck guys, because I can save a bunch of money? If I hire 10 people working for my company and they're all women, then I can save 25% off the top of their wages for each one of those people. So that means I almost have, just off those 10 people, I have enough money to pay one other person. I can hire like 11 people for that money that I saved off of not having one guy. Or I can hire one man for the cost of saving that I got on all those 10 women. So why isn't that happening then, if that's the case? If women are so much more qualified or equally qualified to men and can equally do everything that a man can do and get paid less, then why aren't they just hiring men? And these are the things that break down their logic, that they it's not that they don't have an answer for it. They obviously have an answer for it. They'll tell you all kinds of stupid shit and try to make it look like it's your fault. Basically that's the go-to for women, right? It's always something. There's always a reason. So you know. But the fact is, there's not really much of a reason. You know, it's just it's a systemic problem, and it's getting worse. You know, we're getting further and further removed from reality, and this this kind of schizophrenic mob mentality that's going on now is making these movements look worse and worse. You know, you can't have a movement that doesn't act civilly, first of all, and doesn't have a point. You know, and they have like their little you know, I'll be back Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes, and that's their point, you know. And they put out some good statements about things that they want to do, but then when you watch them, they don't do anything that they say they want, you know. And they're just, a lot of these movements, it's kind of almost funny. It's kind of, they're doing exactly on the opposite end of the scale what they're protesting against. You know, and what I mean by that is, you know, they're talking about racist white people, right? So the way we stop the racist white people is we make segregated places in our colleges and safe spaces where only black people can go. I seem to remember a time when they did that, where they had like black and white water fountains. I think they called that segregation. They had black seats on the buses. Is that the new catchphrase? We want to call that. That wasn't segregation. That was safe spaces. Those were black safe spaces on the buses. That's what those were. You know, the all black colleges and the kids that couldn't go into schools and study with white kids. That's because those were black safe spaces. They had to go to a black school because those were just safe spaces. Yeah, that makes total sense. See, they've completely lost all logic. You know, they'll say this shit and they don't think. They don't use their brain cells. They don't rub those last two brain cells together and think about what the fuck they're saying. And like I say, I'm not throwing shade. I'm just unpacking this and getting people to understand, try to get people to understand a little bit more what's going on, because it doesn't make any sense. And if you sit down and you think about it logically, it makes perfect sense. You know, everybody's tagging on the back of the feminists. And the way they've ran their Nazi party for the last 25 or 30 years, to the point now where we've got them fighting over nothing. Now we're talking about manspreading, and just they're running out of ideas of things they can fight for. And you can tell by what they're fighting for now and what they're pushing for now is just they used to try to hide the fact that they were man-hating and that they just wanted to take men's rights, and they wanted to take all of the men's rights and make men basically subservient to women. They were trying to hide that. Now they're not. They were trying to hide that stuff behind other things where they acted like they had a real reason to be fighting. Now a lot of people are starting to wake up and realize that the things they're fighting for don't really exist. So now they're actually starting to just come out of the woodwork and say, no, we're going to go to the UN and tell men that you can't get on the internet and talk to us and tell us our stuff that we're saying is bullshit, that's hate speech, that it's sexual assault if you get on the internet and talk to somebody in another country and say like, wow, you got nice looking hair. That's a microaggression. You know, these kind of things. They're just catchphrases that mean nothing. It's bullshit. And this is where we've come to now. We've come to this society where we have a society of men, which are white knight simps, and women, which are feminists, that are victims. But the cool thing is that I've been seeing more and more lately is a lot of women are waking up to this fact. A lot of women are waking up to this fact because they're in school, they're in college, they're in high school, and there's all these women, these feminist women running around kind of annoying them and talking about how men are all bad and stuff like that. And it's affecting their lives because they don't believe, they think they're a bunch of idiots, which they are. But the problem is those women that don't believe in it, they still can't find a boyfriend. They can't date. A lot of women in colleges now are talking about they can't find any dates because, like I've said before, 68% of the graduates in colleges right now are women, which means if you're in college, everybody around you is a woman. You know, 100% of the people that go to colleges nowadays, about 28% actually make it. Of the 100% that enroll, about 28% of those graduate, get all the way to graduating college. So a big portion of people don't even graduate. Most of it, you know, like 74% don't even graduate. Don't even, like, just end up with debt. So if you look at that, out of that 28% that's left of the people that graduated college, 68% of that 28% are women, which means there's not a lot to choose from. And a lot of these women, a lot of college girls are actually dating older men, and they're dating people that aren't even in college because a lot of guys won't date them anymore. And with the MGTOW movement, what's happening now is it's getting harder and harder for women that don't care about feminism, that try to say, like, they try to harp that I'm not a feminist and I don't want anything to do with feminism and I'm a NEWALT, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's not. Men have already woken up to the fact that even if you're not a feminist, all of the laws that feminists have put in place still are going to affect you, whether you're with a so-called NEWALT or not. So when you get divorced, she can take everything from you, your entire life. She can destroy your entire life, your entire existence, and turn you into a wretch of a human being, working your entire life to give her money, whether she's feminist or not. And men are starting to wake up to this fact, and it's becoming harder and harder for any woman to get a date, especially in a college setting. A lot of guys are waking up to the fact of what's going on, and they don't, you know, you'll have some girl that's going to college and she can't pass her classes are getting harder. She wants to drop out of school, but she doesn't want her family to think she's you know, a loser or whatever, because maybe her parents are the ones that paid for her college. So she tricks some guy into knocking her up, and then she gets married and tells him, oh, I'm pregnant and I have to drop out of school, and you know, you can keep going to school. But then of course she's going to have a baby and he's in college, so he's got to drop out of school as well, and he's got to start working and forgetting his job. So her life fucked up his life, you know. And this is common. This happens all the time in the United States. You know, you talk to most guys, they were in college and then they met some girl. I had the same thing happen to me, you know. So this is how, you know, I'm unpacking that. This is how we understand most of the movements that are coming out now, the reason why they're the way they are. And you'll have these white knight simps that'll get on here and fight about it and say that that's not the reason and blah blah blah, and you know, they'll pull out their victims cards and tell you all this stuff. But this is basically what's going on now. Is it's really hard for these people to see past their victim cards, and they want to blame people for things they're causing themselves. You know, now I'm not going to say that they're causing like the police brutality and all that stuff. That's real. That's there's no blame but on the police. The onus is on the police. But the way you go about making the change in that is not how they're doing it. You know, you don't go around and start shooting cops. You don't go around and start yelling at cops. You know, you go into the local court systems, and you go into the local protests at the courthouses and stuff like that, and you talk to the legislators of your cities and your states and your towns and the governors, and you petition them and sign stuff and get more laws enacted where it restricts what they can and can't do, the police, you know, things like that. You have to use their bullshit against them, basically. That's the only way you can make a difference, you know. You have to make it harder for them to do their job so that they have to keep themselves in check, you know. And that's the only way you can help, you know, because they don't give a fuck if you're out in the streets yelling at them and whatever. They don't care. As soon as they get a chance, they'll taser you and fucking spray your face with mace. They don't give a fuck about you. So the fact that you're out there yelling at them and screaming at them, that just gives them a way to say, well, see, we were right all along, you know. So that's, and that's a feminist thing again, you know. So yeah. So if you liked what I talked about here, or you got any comments, questions, whatever, leave them in the section below. Share, like, and subscribe. Like I say, I hope you guys learned something from this, and